Today's topic for Being You is the second principle. We affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Today's opening words. The greatest challenge of the day is how to bring about a revolution of the heart, a revolution which has to start with each one of us. Dorothy Day.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung, through every land, by every tongue. Oh, what a piece of work are we, how marvelously wrought! The quick contrivance of the hand, the wonder of our thought, the wonder of our thought. Why need to look for miracles outside of nature's law? Humanity we wonder at with every breath we draw, with every breath we draw. But give us room to move and grow, but give our spirit play, and we can make a world of light out of the common clay, out of the common clay.
Transitional Words 577. If someone with courage and vision can rise to lead in nonviolent action, the winter of despair can, in the twinkling of an eye, be turned into the summer of hope. It is possible to live in peace. Nonviolence is not a garment to put on and off at will. Its seat is in the heart, and it must be an inseparable part of our being. It is possible to live in peace. Nonviolence, which is a quality of the heart, cannot come by appeal to the brain. It is a plant of slow growth, growing imperceptibly but surely. It is possible to live in peace. If a single person achieves the highest kind of love, it will be sufficient to neutralize the hate of millions. It is possible to live in peace. If we are to reach real peace in this world, and if we are to carry on a real war against war, we shall have to begin with the children. It is possible to live in peace. The future depends on what we do in the present. It is possible to live in peace. Mohandas K. Gandhi. Today's speaker is Sister Paula, Damiane. Are you hearing voices? Now that I have your attention, there are voices who could be telling us something about justice. We know Martin Luther King, Jr. Are we as familiar with Dorothy Day or St. Mother Theodore Curran?
Good morning. When Julie asked me for the title of today's reflection, I was in the process of reading about St. Joan of Arc, the 15th century woman who was sure she heard the voice of God telling her to save her beloved country of France. It led me to think about the voices we hear, or perhaps more importantly, the voices who have something important to say to us. I'd like then to spend a few minutes this morning sharing with you 3 persons whose voices are important to me. Voices who impact my life and hopefully can do the same for you. During February, Black History Month, they become particularly significant. Who are they? Dr. Martin Luther King, Dorothy Day, and St. Mother Theodore Guerin. We are certainly familiar with the giant for justice, Martin Luther King Jr. Let us listen to the words he wrote in 1963 while being held in the Birmingham jail. Just a reminder, 1963, nearly 60 years ago. Here is what he wrote, quote, "Beyond this, I'm in Birmingham because injustice is here. Just as the 8th century prophets left their little villages and carried their 'Thus saith the Lord' far beyond the boundaries of their hometowns, and just as the Apostle Paul left his little village of Tarsus and carried the gospel of Jesus Christ to practically every hamlet and city of the Greco-Roman world, I too am compelled to carry the gospel of freedom beyond my particular hometown. Like Paul, I must constantly respond to the Macedonian call for aid." End quote. King reminds his readers, and therefore reminds us, that there is a gospel commission motivating him. Do we have a gospel commission that motivates us? Do we hear the voice of the gospel calling us to act wherever there is injustice? Or do you and I read the paper or watch the news and bemoan the injustices we see, but hesitate to take action? Like Paul the Apostle, mustn't we too constantly respond to the call for aid to others? King believed he needed to act. Can we hear that voice? Can we listen to it? Later in that same letter, King responded to those who labeled him an extremist, and he writes, quote, "But as I continued to think about the matter, I gradually gained a bit of satisfaction from being considered an extremist. Was not Jesus an extremist in love? Love your enemies, bless them that curse you, pray for them that despitefully use you. Was not Amos an extremist for justice? Let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like a mighty stream. Was not Paul an extremist for the gospel of Jesus Christ? I bear in my body the marks of the Lord Jesus. Was not Martin Luther an extremist? Here I stand, I can do no other, so help me God. Was not John Bunyan an extremist? I will stay in jail to the end of my days before I make a mockery of my conscience. Was not Abraham Lincoln an extremist? This nation cannot survive half slave and half free." End quote. Then King goes on to write, quote, "So the question is not whether we will be extremists, but what kind of extremists we will be. Will we be extremists for hate, or will we be extremists for love? Will we be extremists for the preservation of injustice, or will we be extremists for the cause of justice?" End quote. Powerful questions, are they not? And here we are, 60 years later, facing the same injustices, just as we saw this past week when bomb threats were made against traditionally Black colleges and universities. Are we acting for justice? Are we listening to the voice of Dr. King? Dorothy Day. So who is Dorothy Day? Some of you may be familiar with this woman who died in 1980 at the age of 83. She was an American journalist turned social activist who, along with Peter Morin, founded the Catholic Worker Movement, a collection of autonomous communities of Catholics and their associates whose aim it is to live in accordance with the justice and charity of Jesus Christ. Today, there are 187 Catholic worker communities who remain committed to nonviolence, to voluntary poverty, to prayer, and to hospitality for the homeless, the exiled, the hungry, and the forsaken. Dorothy Day, like Martin Luther King, espoused nonviolence and lived her life focused on the message of the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, the meek, those who hunger and thirst for justice. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the merciful, those who are pure in heart. Blessed are the peacemakers. These guided her life, along with a saying she heard once on her annual retreat. You love God just as much as the one you love least. It tells of the perfection of love that Dorothy was seeking. Her whole life was a testimony to the unwavering faith that no one is to be excluded from love. You love God just as much as the one you love least. That's a voice I find difficult to hear. How about you? Dorothy Day's culminating expression of love, at once for God and all her neighbors, was her utter abhorrence and rejection of war, which she believed was the matrix of most of all other evils that disfigure our society. Dorothy was not simply a political pacifist. Her love of peace came from fidelity to the Beatitude, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God." Are you and I true peacemakers? Do you and I love the least among us? Do you and I love those whom we find most difficult to love? Is Dorothy Day's voice one we can hear? Saint Mother Theodore Guerin. Born in Brittany, France, and named Anne-Thérèse Guerin, she joined a religious community of sisters and eventually led a group of 6 Sisters of Providence to begin a mission on the Indiana frontier. The year was 1840. They came equipped with little more than a steadfast desire to serve God. She and her sisters endured many hardships as immigrant missionaries to a country so different from their own beloved France. The winters here were harsh. Perhaps it was a day much like today when she wrote, "Everything is frozen, even the bread." They knew little English when they first arrived, and yet established an academy for girls within 9 months of settling at St. Mary of the Woods. She was indeed a champion of the cause for educating women, and the needs here were remarkable. Only a very small percentage of girls attended school in Indiana in the mid-1800s. Mother Theodore wanted to change that. In fact, she wrote, quote, "It embarrasses them a little to have women resist them and speak to them about the law. Woman in this country is only yet 1/4 of the family. I hope that through the influence of religion and education, she will eventually become at least 1/2. The better half," unquote. Where did she get the courage to speak out in such a manner? A woman, a foreigner, an immigrant. It came from her deep faith in God, whom she called Providence, a God whom she trusted with her entire being. She wrote, Have confidence in the providence that so far has never failed us. The way is not yet clear. Grope along slowly. Do not press matters. Be patient. Be trustful. And if you lean with all your weight upon providence, you will find yourself well supported. These words, written more than 180 years ago, seem so appropriate for us today, don't they? The way is not yet clear. Grope along slowly. Not gripe along slowly. Grope along slowly. Do not press matters. Be patient. Be trustful. And if you lean with all your weight upon providence, you will find yourself well supported. Can we hear those words? Can we listen to that voice? Please allow me one more story of her deep faith and compassion. By 1842, the small community here was just beginning to feel that they had a chance to succeed. They had pupils, and they had had a good harvest that year, which they stored in their barns for the upcoming winter. However, there were some in the area who held strong anti-Catholic sentiments, and it was suspected that one night a fire was sent by arsonists and destroyed everything: the barn, the harvest, even all the farming equipment. They were left with nothing, forcing Mother Theodore and another sister to make the long journey back to France to beg for money. Following a perilous return journey to the United States, the ship docked in New Orleans, Louisiana. Mother Theodore was astonished at the sights she saw there. And she writes, quote, "The most painful sight I saw in New Orleans was the selling of slaves. Every day in the streets at appointed places, Negroes and Negresses in holiday attire are exposed for this shameful traffic, like the meanest animals at our fairs. This spectacle oppressed my heart. Lo, I said to myself, these Americans, so proud of their liberty, thus make game of the liberty of others." These many years later, we need to ask ourselves how we as Americans use our liberty. Do we deny liberty and freedom to others, to immigrants searching for a better life? Do we, in this age, misuse our liberty? How has our national pride shifted? Can we hear St. Mother Theodore's words today? Can we listen to her words and her voice? Martin Luther King Jr., Dorothy Day, St. Mother Theodore Guerin, each of them had a faith that called them to act. Martin Luther King Jr. acted as a champion for the cause of justice for racial equality. Dorothy Day was called to act for the poor, for the homeless. And St. Mother Theodore Guerin was called to act for women and education. Where is your faith calling you? What are you hearing? Are you listening? God bless you. Have a good day.
closing words. Just and kind. But if it is necessary to be just, it is necessary above all to be kind. St. Mother Theodore Guerin.
May the blessings of love rest upon you. May peace abide with you. May God's presence illuminate your heart now and forevermore.
Go in peace. Know that you are loved and that your life is sacred. Value statement. We value a sense of community, religious tolerance, cooperation, diversity, active social justice, and good work. Mission statement. We exist to provide a community for persons of diverse, liberal, religious beliefs, and to support one another in our individual, spiritual, and ethical growth.